my center is called Mad Numbers, and it's on decimals and fractions. And to begin with, it's 5th grade, so I would give the kids a step book, and each page would say the activity and the instructions so that they could go along with it. And after each activity, so I know that the children did complete it, they would write a reflection, 4 to 5 sentences on what they liked about the activity, or what they learned from the activity, what they didn't learn, or what I should do as a teacher to make the activity better. So I would get feedback from the students at the same time. The first activity would be using this counting book. And it's a simple activity, especially for 5th graders, I think, but to get them into like the whole feel of the decimals and fractions, I think it would be a good activity. So they would create a drawing of the numbers mentioned in the book. So in the book on the side, as you can see, it has the fractions. Well, I would use the fraction cubes. So then it replicates the fraction cubes, and I would ask them simple questions like on this sheet, like on the first day to represent the first day in a fraction using the fraction cube. So the book goes up to 12. So then if they would want to, they could use the one over 12, this one, or they could use different ones to represent that. They would draw the numbers, and they would, next to their drawing, they would have something like this, and they would just trace the fraction cubes that they used. And afterwards, they would fill in the chart below, and then they would show like how many people are in the first picture. This picture's about 1, it would be 1 person, and then they would put 1 over 1, which equals 1 whole. So that's that. For the second one, they would go on the computer, and if the internet's down that day, we would use catalogs from their favorite type of stores, such as Children's Plays, Jamboree, stuff like that, Toys R Us. They would have a budget of $350, and they would be able to spend it anywhere on the site, but they have to include taxes and the shipping and handling. And they would fill out the shopping spree sheet on the bottom. They would add up the prices of the materials they wish to buy, and they would have to remember to line up their decimals. So basically, they're adding, subtracting, and multiplying decimals. And then on the bottom, it would say like to find out how much money you have left, subtract the amount of money you have already spent. And basically just simple steps that will remind them how to add, subtract, and multiply decimals. The third activity would be the money. How much money do you have? They would practice counting money by using the flashcards, and basically jot down their answers in a math journal. And on each flashcard, it shows a picture of the money, so then they have to count, like this is 21 and 2, so 22, and then they would have to count the change, and the answers are on the back. Once they're done doing this, they have to convert these decimals into fractions. So they would be converting decimals into fractions for that activity. For the fourth activity, they would have to, it's called the What's Cooking. They would have to create their own recipe using these cards, these recipe cards. And they would write the quantity of ingredients as mixed or improper fractions. And even if they're referring to the pan size, like the baking pan size or their casserole size, or the time that it takes to cook, they would still put that in fractions and decimals. So they would have to be creative and create some type of recipe that they would like. And for the manipulatives for that would be the cups and the spoons, and then also things that show that like this requires 1 pound of chicken and 2 tablespoons of butter and stuff like that, so that they know, okay, well, 2.5 cups of hot water, I need to write that down, and that includes a fraction. And for the fifth activity, it would be Snap a Spoon. And this activity would require 4 students. So in each activity, there would be 4 students, and there would be a set of 3. And they would be on the right, and there would be a dealer, and they would hand out the cards, and each card has a different fraction, but there's 4 sets of 1 fraction. So this one would be 3 over 20, and then there would be one that would represent that as well in a percentage, a decimal, and then another fraction like 60 over 100. So they would have to match up the fractions, so they would have to know that this fraction also has a decimal and a percentage, and they have to combine those and match them. And whoever gets the first set of 4 would have to grab a spoon secretly, and then the other students would, once they spot that student getting the spoon, they would have to grab the spoon right away. And then whoever doesn't get that spoon, because you would have to put, if you have 4 students, you would put 3 spoons. So whoever doesn't get the spoon would be the record keeper, and then after that, each student goes on out. And if they finish their work, they would have to place all their work in a basket. Once they finish their work and their reflections in their step book, they could do the brain twisters, and these just are simple questions about money and fractions and decimals. So basically the same thing that the Learning Center would be about.